Hello and welcome to Spooning With Me, Mark Wogan. We are here in the Lindsay room at Corrigan's in Mayfair. And the chefs here and my good self have been cooking for today's very, very special guest. Now, who is this guest, I hear you cry? Well, she's a dame. Yes, we are close to royalty. In fact, food royalty. But it's been a restaurateur, a caterer, a teacher, a judge of some note, but she's now just cooking in a Cotswold kitchen. Will you please welcome to Spooning with Mark Wogan, none other than Dame Prue Leith.
What an introduction!
Well, I mean, you deserve so much more.
No.
Given your standing now, which
Look,
I mean,
what I'm mostly famous for is being old.
No, come on.
No, I
That's
am.
not true. That is not
No,
true. And now, listen, there are only two dames when it comes to food currently. There's you and some lady called Mary. I don't know. Do we know her?
Of course we know her.
Now, I sort of have this sort of image in my head, and perhaps you can either confirm it or dispel it, that, you two like to sort of get together, knock back maybe some fine champagne and maybe arm wrestle over whose recipes are the best.
No. I have known Mary for many, many years. We're not close friends, but we do like each other. And when I got the job that she had given up on Bake Off,
yes,
I rang her up to ask her whether Paul Hollywood was workable with. And I thought, well, she had worked with him for 8 years by then or something. So I knew she would tell me the truth. And she was very interesting. She said, you know what, he is so good and he's very good at his job and he really knows baking backwards. She said, and she's a lovely guy and very friendly and easy to work with, but she said, he knows so much and he is so knowledgeable. He doesn't need you at all.
He does. He does.
No, he doesn't. She said, you have to just hold your own. You have to push yourself in because otherwise he'll just do the show without you. And that's true because he's so on it. But I love it. I love it because I just listen and then I think, yes, I think he's probably right. And I say it again. And I repeat it
again in a different way. But I mean, it does appear that show in particular does sort of somehow guarantee a damehood.
I know.
You had this huge career, and then you appear on this baking program, and suddenly you get recognised.
Get a damehood.
As did Mary.
Yeah.
I mean, how long do you think it's before it's
Dame
Paul? Do you think Dame Paul is coming?
He should have a damehood, well, a knighthood. I mean, that's the equivalent of a damehood, is a knighthood.
I prefer Dame Paul.
I don't think he'd like that. Sir Paul, he has got an MBE, but he does deserve more, actually.
But it is funny. So you look at sort of like what I was saying the other day. I watched that Jamie Oliver Chef's Table, and you watch that and you think, well, he should have a knighthood.
He should,
shouldn't he?
He should. Well, Jamie particularly because he's done such a lot of charity stuff, and mostly you get honours not for just being good at business or good at your job, because you get paid for
services too. But your list was quite long. I mean, it's services to food, charity, broadcasting.
Yeah, well, I've lived a long time, Mark, so I had lots of time to do lots of different.
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, we've both been around quite a while, but I mean, you started out.
You're a boy. You're a mere boy.
Literally 55 this year. I'm 55.
You're a mere boy.
Well, you say that. That's very kind of you. But
about half my age.
Really?
Just about.
I mean, what's the secret? I mean, do you have a sort of life-size pickling jar that you put yourself into at the end of each day?
Pickles, yeah. I'd like to get my pickling jar, yeah. Like this one. No, I think I'm really lucky because I think I must have good genes, obviously, and I'm very happy. I think that a lot of people age because they're not enjoying their lives.
Yes.
and I think happiness makes a huge difference. And I am, I have every reason to be happy because all my children are healthy. My two children are healthy. All my grandchildren are healthy and happy and doing well. And, I've had great, lovely career in lots of different, I've done
You've done a lot.
I've done a lot, and it's all been quite successful. It hasn't all been successful. Of course, there've been failures on the way, but the fact is that I've had a good career in catering.
What have you learned?
Restaurateur.
I always say, what have you learned the most from? Out of all the things you've done, what do you think you learned the most about you from?
Oh, about me from probably the sort of food, restaurateuring, catering, restaurateuring. I always loved the catering side more than the restaurant because the restaurant was very glamorous, and fashionable and successful and stuff. But catering is great because you never have a rehearsal.
No.
For anything, any event. It's a one-off, and you've got to get it right, and it often goes wrong, and you have to jump to and fix it. And my brother used to say that I would create a crisis because I was so good at fixing them. That's not
She loves
true.
a crisis.
It's not true.
She loves a crisis. But if we go all the way back, you're originally from Cape Town.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, you were born
I'm South African, yeah.
And, you were born into South Africa at quite a dark time in its history. How do you think that shaped you as a young woman growing up in apartheid South Africa?
Well, interestingly, my family were a very liberal family. My mother was an actress, and she campaigned. She belonged to something called the Black Sash, which was a women's movement against apartheid. And so she would come home. I remember her coming home once, and her black coat was all splashed with egg yolks because she'd been standing on the town hall steps protesting about apartheid, and people had been throwing eggs at these women. And so so I grew up in a family who constantly told us that it was wrong the way black Africans were treated. However, we still lived within that system. And my father was very successful, a businessman, and my mother was a successful theatre manager and actress. And so we lived very well, and we had a cook, and I had a black nanny, and we had a gardener, and so we were really well looked after. So I grew up with in the South African tradition that the servants lived in sort of quite basic accommodation behind our house, and our house was very grand. And it didn't occur to me until I went to university and got more stuck into anti-apartheid campaigning, how absolutely monstrous it was that my nanny I had grown up with a nanny who only saw her children for 3 weeks a year. In fact, 2 weeks a year, because she had to get there. 2 weeks every year when she had her leave, her holiday, and she had to travel over 1,000 miles to get to the sort of reservation area where her tribe was supposed to live. And until the Group Areas Act, they had actually been able to live near Johannesburg. But then the government just declared that, if you were Xhosa, you had to go and live there, miles away, absolutely. And she saw her children for 2 weeks a year, and she saw us, and we absolutely loved her, but she saw us every day for a whole year. I mean,
but that is extraordinary.
It's dreadful, isn't it?
And we're not talking, I mean, you would say we are, but we're not talking, hundreds of years ago.
No, we're talking, I mean, I suppose, I forget when the ANC came into power, 1990 something.
Yeah.
And that was when it changed. And that was the most glorious day when, Mandela walked out of prison, for example, and then when he got into power. they were just fantastic hope in the country. And even the sort of Afrikaner community, who'd probably been the strongest white community in favour of apartheid, they believed in it as a kind of religion almost. Even Mandela was so good and so moderate and so intellectual and careful that they really got behind it. And the whole country, including white people, were behind the whole ANC being in power. And unfortunately, they've become as corrupt as most African
it's extraordinary, isn't it?
Administrations.
Because it's
absolutely heartbreaking.
I always say about South Africa, given its location in the world, its natural resources, all these things, it should be one of the world's. It should be in the G7 or the G8, or it should be one of the world's superpowers.
Of course it should.
But it's always been systematically misgoverned.
It's always been misgoverned. I mean, first of all, it was very financially prosperous under apartheid, but they were excluded from everything because the rest of the world disapproved of what they were doing. You're quite right too. And then if Mandela could have sort of stayed some miraculous way, stayed young, or there could have been a Mandela dynasty of honest people. But it hasn't happened. And corruption is now so endemic. It's not so bad in the Cape, but in the rest of the country, it's just dreadful. And of course, the result is because, the officials keep stealing all the money. I mean, none of the electricity doesn't work. They have blackouts now for sometimes 10, 11 hours a day, every 24.
I mean, it's so I've visited many times over the years, and it's a fabulous country. And you just go, why?
I know, and it's still, I mean, I think, I don't want to dissuade people from going there, because I think the tourist experience is still absolutely magnificent, and it's very safe. You don't want to go wandering into Khayelitsha at 2 a.m, but if you stick to the rules, you'll be fine. And it's so fantastic.
No different to here. There are certain areas of London we wouldn't go. If you are doing a tour, don't go there.
Yes.
So, having read quite a lot about you and Johnny, the producer's notes and whatever, I'm suspecting there was a rebellious team, Prue.
I think I was always very enthusiastic. Put it that way.
Enthusiastic, yes.
I think. I think that I've only recently realized this, but I think that there's a streak in my character, which is actually a fault, in the sense that I'm quite insensitive. It never occurs to me that somebody's not going to like something, and I don't pick up vibes of disapproval, and so I just keep going for what I want to do. So I think I've been sort of lucky that I haven't been too self-conscious, and I've never been daunted by the thought that somebody's going to disapprove of me or not like me. I just think I'm going to do it, and why would anybody object?
Well, I mean, your memoir, Relish, which was pretty warts and all.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think you should write an autobiography unless you're going to tell the truth, and only be interesting. I think the most boring autobiographies are generally written by successful businessmen who are trying to tell us what a great life they've had. And it's so boring because it's just one business coup after another, and name dropping the whole way through, and it's just boring.
And no sense of failure, which I don't know about you. That's the stuff I learn from. Is when I fall over, it's how I get up. And I think that 50, having abortions at 15, affairs with older men. There's this. I just don't know. There's this sort of racy side to you that you sort of.
Look, let's be honest, Mark. I mean, you either like sex or you don't.
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
good?
No, I think that's a fair statement. You heard it here first from Dame Prue Leith. You either like sex or you don't.
Yeah.
And you obviously do.
Hmm.
And ran at it with gusto.
I did. I was
formative age.
yes, I was. Yes, I did. I mean, I did have my first affair when I was 15, which was not at all successful. I mean, the reason I was with this guy was, and this is such a terrible thing to say, but when you're 15, you are enormously influenced by things like a sports car.
Yeah.
And he had a Triumph Herald open sports car, green.
That would tip me over.
And that was it. That, as far as I mean, I was still at school. Everybody else had a boyfriend. I didn't. And this chap turned up with this car. So I thought, well, that'll do. And he had his previous girlfriend's name on the side of this car. Mm-hmm. And I know her name to this day. It was Kerry. Oh. And my ambition...
Written on his car?
Yes. He called his car after his girlfriend, Kerry. So it was my ambition to get Kerry off that side of that car. So I think I succumbed to his wiles because I was pretending to be grown up. And I didn't really know what was going on. And I did sleep with him, and that was awful. And so I didn't really actually enjoy sex at all, not much. Can we stop talking?
No, of course you can. I mean, I can't believe I've ended up talking about sex with Dame Prue Leith, but there we go. Did your parents despair of you at that age?
They didn't know about that.
Okay, right.
So I never told them about that. But I did fall in love with when I was 18. I really fell for a guy in uniform on a ship, the classic shipboard romance. And I didn't sleep with him, but I just lusted after him. And my parents were horrified because I met him in the middle of the night on the, what are they called? Yeah, on the deck. And I was sharing a cabin with my brother at the time, and he woke up and I wasn't there. And so he panicked. He thought maybe I'd fallen overboard or something because I didn't come back. So he went and told my parents.
Fallen over something.
Went and told my parents I was missing. And so my father came looking for us and found us on the deck having a little cuddle. So that wasn't good.
So did the man in uniform nearly go overboard?
No, it was all very manly and civilized. Anyway, and then my parents said, and I said, but I absolutely love him and I want to marry him. And I mean, to this guy's credit, he said, he said he loved me and, blah, blah. And so my father said, well, if you, he was on his way to Australia. we were going back we were going back from England to Cape Town on the ship, and he was going on to Perth. So he did, and my father said, if you still love each other in a year's time, then that's fine, but you're not going to see her for a year. Oh, we said we'll be faithful. Well, about 2 weeks later, I'd forgotten about him.
Yeah, of course. You were 15, 16.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I look at that sort of age and that sort of thing, and what you may or may not know is you were in part responsible for saving me at a time when my parents were very despairing of me.
What are you up to, Mark?
Anything I could get my hands on, quite frankly. And I left school with no qualifications, but I loved food. And I loved cooking because my mother was an incredible cook. And I went to your school for a year.
Did you?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I went to your school for a year. And I think if the new judge on Celebrity Bake Off, Caroline Waldegrave, was reminded of me, she would roll her eyes.
Oh, right. I'll remind her of you.
Because we are talking 87. So... Yeah. Fee was one of the tutors at that stage. Yes, Caroline was in charge of the college, And I think I was what would be described as a difficult student.
Difficult student.
But there was a lot of distraction, because back then,
Mm.
the school was there, and the adjoining building was
It was
a
the pub.
the Builders Arms.
Yeah.
Right. And there was 100 students on the diploma course, and 96 of them were female.
Mhm.
So there was quite a lot of distraction. There was
Yeah,
quite,
yeah.
and
I
you
mean,
used to
poor
do
boy.
things
I
like
can see you.
you would have a fortified wine tasting at 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning. This could go terribly wrong. But I would like to point out that in what was a challenging period in my life, that year was amazing.
Did you get your diploma?
With distinction.
Well, I'll tell you what that means. It means you did actually do some work, because you couldn't get it if you missed more than 8 days.
Oh, I definitely missed.
So you didn't miss more than 8 days.
I might.
And 8 days and years.
I can't remember.
And
I mean,
we'd have counted. You couldn't get it.
You had to sort of do a book at the end. You had to do your own sort of recipe book. So I did my own interpretation of Marco Pierre White's White Heat, which was a lot of
Great book.
It was a lot of black and white photography, sort of taking the mickey out of the genre.
Well, still.
But no, it changed how I viewed food. It gave me a grounding that saw me spend most of my life in food.
Yeah.
But you've also, you've had quite a few notable people through. I mean, there's some bloke, he does, what's his name, does Saturday Kitchen, what's his name? Oh, Matt Tebbit, that's the bloke. Matt went through there. Lorraine Pascal.
Yeah.
My business partner in the other business that I've got, Neil Rankin, the chef Neil Rankin. So many people went through that school. I think some royalty went through your school, didn't they? Mm-hmm. Yes. And the future king enjoys probably quite nice home cooked food as a result.
I think so.
Doesn't he?
I think so. But I think yes, we started, because Caroline's rather posh. She's well connected young woman, or not so young woman anymore. But when we opened that school, she was only 23, and she was the principal, and I was 29.
Wow.
And we
I'm just thinking, what year was that? That was
74.
74.
1974. 1975, I think. We used to, if the students, if they came with their parents to interview us, or to look at the school and see if they'd send their daughters, because in those days it was mostly girls.
Yes.
I'm glad to say now it's about 50-50. But
I wasn't complaining back then.
No, well, perhaps you would now, because there were more men.
Yeah.
But when we interviewed the girls, and their mums came too, I would do it, because I was slightly older than Caroline, and Caroline was she looked very young for 23, and we just thought that nobody'd have any faith in her, but she was terrific, as you know. She got terrific character. And I opened that school really because one day I saw Caroline with she was our head cook in my catering company. And one day I saw her with her arm round a girl who it was her first week, and it was her first day or her second day or something, and she was crying. And Caroline was comforting her, and she had her arm around her. And I just listened to what she was saying, and she was saying, look, the first day in any job is absolutely exhausting. If you've never done a job before, it's really tiring, and it's stressful, and of course you're upset. But don't worry, we know you've got the skills we want. We know you've got real potential. I promise you, by Friday, you will love working here. But, dry your eyes. And she said, but we do cut the carrots like this. Very firmly. And I thought that mixture, that combination of telling somebody exactly what you expect from them, so they've got clear instructions, and being encouraging and helpful and motherly, if you like, is the right combination. It's the way people should be treated in a kitchen.
Yeah, and learn.
And learn. And what I'm so proud of about that school is, as you say, lots of the students have gone on into the restaurant trade. And I don't think that as they grow up, they will ever tolerate the sort of bad bullying and really abuse that young people used to suffer and still do in some kitchens.
Yep.
It's just appalling. And I can remember when I was chairman of the Restaurateurs Association, I used to give talks all the time about we have to change this industry. It's wrong. This is no way to encourage staff. But at that time, we had people banging on our doors wanting to work for us. Thank God what's changed it now is that you can get a job like that in the industry now because restaurateurs are crying out for
decent
staff.
people.
Half the restaurants in the country seem to be closed on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays because
It's just become incredibly difficult.
They can't make money, can't get staff.
No, it's and no representation at government level.
No.
Where we're talking about a 3-4 billion a year industry.
Hospitality industry is huge.
And I just think the way it's been treated at a treasury level and at a government support level is disgraceful. And people will miss it when it's gone. And if it carries on like this, I truly believe it will be gone, because you come into it with passion and enthusiasm, and the business side of it nowadays will knock the stuff out.
And it's such a tragedy because for the first time, I mean, in the last 10 years, or perhaps 20, but in a fairly short time, the whole country has become really interested in food. You look at what's available in the supermarkets, the quality of manufactured goods. You have to pay for it, but you get really, really good. You can get really good products, and there are people. I probably get 2 a week, young men, particularly men, saying, "I want to be a chef. How do I go about it? And where can I learn? And what's the best way?" And so forth. People actually longing to be in that industry, but somehow, and I just always encourage them and say, "Look, give it a crack. It's hard work. You generally work weekends and in evenings. You've got to realize your social life is out of the window. But if you really want to do it, the rest of the world will still be there in a year's time if you change your mind and decide to be an architect."
Well, I think what I loved about Leiths is, when I was there, was whether you wanted a career in it or not, it turned you into a really competent cook. What I loved was the focus on doing stuff by hand. And I don't know if that's still the thing. It's like, well, what are you going to do if you are somewhere and there isn't an electric hand whisk?
Yeah.
Well, you've got to learn how to get egg whites to stiff peak with your hand.
You don't have to do that the whole way through.
No, not the whole way through.
You have to learn how to do it. Yeah.
But also, still to this day, if anybody goes, "Oh, I'm thinking of starting cooking," I go, buy the Leiths Cookery Bible, because every single recipe in it works.
Yeah,
because
it's been
tested up the wazoo.
I know. We used to have the sort of the Bible, but we had a sort of master copy in the office, and we would have 90 students testing every recipe all the time. So when we decided that something needed changing, this was the days before computers, we would have a little sticker that would go over, not 12 ounces, it should be 10 ounces. Yeah. And then if you pulled away the sticker that said 10 ounces, underneath it would say 12 ounces, and underneath it would say 10 ounces. It would sometimes change to and fro, because...
Well, I mean, but there's no accounting for because even if they were at the school,
Yeah.
didn't necessarily mean they were going to make great cooks.
No.
But what you did was you made them proficient.
Yeah. Exactly.
And hopefully instill some passion. But what I find interesting is this. So with all that sort of background in food, all that history in food, one of the things you love is this stuff. Bird's custard.
I do absolutely love it.
Now, I've got something lovely to go with that, which are actually Indonesian and English strawberries.
Lovely.
Which is very good. Now, you share a love of
Rhubarb would be even better.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna...
But rhubarb...
Sorry, Dave. They are fresh English strawberries.
No, they'll be absolutely lovely. But
you share your love of bird's custard with Michelle Roux Jr., who is also a lover of bird's custard. And has been on the show. And the other thing that's interesting is, which I think you are in no small part responsible.
This is not very kind. You've given me these two things without a spoon.
Oh, sorry, there's the spoon. There we go. But what you're responsible for is making a career in hospitality aspirational. Because when I started out, right, so I went through, I think it was 88, 87, I went through Leiths. Mm-hmm. And you went into a kitchen there after that, and it was still pretty much populated by thieves, lunatics, and drug addicts. So you had to really want to do it.
Yes, you did.
And I do. But now, and this is something I talked about with Michelle when he was on the show, when he did those first 2 seasons, really, of MasterChef The Professionals. Yeah. It was, one, you despaired for the industry because you thought none of these people can actually cook. But what he said was that, it was difficult to get people to trust in the format. And now you get a very high standard of cook. But what's interesting is how many of those people on that show now are quite obviously privately educated. Yeah. And they've chosen a career that was essentially viewed as a working class career. Absolutely. Prior to that. So when
that whole thing is so interesting. I mean, when Caroline and I opened Leiths School in the 70s, most of our applicants were middle class girls. I mean, they were middle class because it was an expensive school, and that only people who could afford it were middle upper class. But we got no boys, although sometimes we'd hear from the girls that their brothers really wanted to come, but their parents said, you've got to go into the city. Yep. It was unheard of for a middle-class lad to be a cook. That was considered, not done. And, you've got to go and earn your living in the city. But then that has wonderfully changed, and it doesn't happen so much. But the reason I opened the school in the first place was because I had a restaurant and a catering company, and I was hiring people all the time. And I got two types of cooks, and they reflected that. I either got middle class women who came from the Cordon Bleu, young women who came from mostly the Cordon Bleu or some cookery school like that, and they really knew about good food. Their families had taken them on holiday. They knew what paella was, or coq au vin and so on. So they were interested in food. They were interested in provenance and all the rest of it, and they loved good food. But their skills were not great. I mean, their knife skills were nothing like the working class lads that came out of the state catering colleges. And the state catering colleges taught skill really well. The actual physical business of chopping an onion or filleting a fish was a joy to watch them. But they never tasted anything. They didn't think the food they were cooking was for them. They thought they were like mechanics fixing a car for a rich owner of an Aston Martin. They thought, I remember going to catering college at the time, and this lad was skinning squid, which is a horrible job. And he was doing it really well. And he had this huge tray of beautiful fresh squid. And I said, you're so lucky this college can get such wonderful squid. And he said, oh, I wouldn't know. And I said, but aren't you going to eat it? And he said, oh, no, I don't eat that stuff. That's not for us. The customers will eat that. I mean, he had no idea that food was for him as well. He would, and you would have, I would have tastings with some of our chefs, and the young lads would often taste the food quite professionally, but they wouldn't. They would order in a burger.
Mm.
You know, they didn't think it was for them, and they didn't like the idea of posh food.
It's quite so. I remember one of my first, my first and only position at a Michelin-starred restaurant,
Which was that?
and it was L'Ortelin in
All right.
Shenfield in Reading.
Mm.
And
I went there. It was very good.
it's a very good restaurant. But you as the cooks did not get the food in that kitchen ever. And what you got was, I mean, hard-boiled eggs, vinaigrette coleslaw, and some white bread. And that was your star food, if you were lucky. So you were eating essentially sugar sandwiches to keep going. Because, you know, back then you worked 110 hours a week as well for about nothing. I think it was
I know.
$9,000 a year.
I know. Sometimes I feel the industry is responsible for its own disasters, but it's odd that it's so difficult to get staff now, just when things are changing, and it's actually it will change because chefs will have to realize that they can't employ, that young people just will not do the jobs that you did and I did.
No. And I don't, part of me, you know, potentially will sound like an old fart, feels like, you know, you need to understand that it's not an easy job.
No, it's not an easy
Anything that is worthwhile is not easy.
No, it's not an easy job. And there's no doubt that you have to work evenings and weekends. That's the chief problem with it, because obviously
And
everybody
more than 38 hours a week.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't have to work more than 30. I mean, when I had Leiths restaurant, we had everybody on a 38-hour week.
Did you?
We did.
That was very revolutionary back then.
Well, it was, but when we were only open at night.
Yeah.
And so it was it wasn't that difficult. But of course, what the guys did, most of the waiters were Spanish, and they went and go and work in the city at lunchtime.
Yeah.
And they go work so they would do 2 full-time jobs.
But I find that a lot with EU nationals in my business is like, if we can't give them the hours, and when I say hours, they want to work at least 60 a week. They'll go and get a job elsewhere, or they'll work 2 jobs, and then they end up tired because they then find suddenly they're doing 80 hours a week because
they say it's going to be 60 hours, but it's not.
Exactly.
It's 80 hours. Yeah.
But I think there is definitely a sea change in the industry happening as it sort of levels out in a really a kind of post-COVID, post-Brexit world that, or certainly world in pertaining to the UK.
And some of the things that are happening, I mean, there's a local restaurant in Moreton in Marsh, which is tremendously good, but because they've had to cut their staff and also they can't get the staff, they've simply simplified their menus. I mean, you get what you get. You know, and there are lots of restaurants now that are just doing 4 days a week, and sorry guys, but you don't get to choose. Well, you might get a choice in the first course and a choice in the main course.
The other thing,
and why not? I mean, who needs a menu like this?
No, I never trust a massive menu. If I see a massive menu, I just see waste, and I think. Do you remember you'd go into very successful sort of bistros and the menu was sort of
I know.
sized
You think it
for
must be all
football
come from
pitch.
Break Brothers.
Yes, exactly. Not that Break Brothers is bad.
No. Do you know? Shall I tell you a good Break Brothers story? This will please Break Brothers. I'm really ashamed of this, but it's so funny. I went to a restaurant a couple of weeks ago, and I had the best chips I have ever had in my life. They were absolutely amazing, and I said, you know, these have got to be triple fried, and they're just fantastic. And so I said, can please somebody come get the chef to come and tell me how he does his chips? He came with a packet. He said they come from Bake Brothers.
They weren't Pierre Kaufman's chips, were they?
I don't know what they were, but they were Pierre Kaufman's chips in Bake Brothers.
I don't know.
But they were very thick chips, and they had the skins on. The skin was still on, and they were just absolutely fantastic. Anyhow,
Straight out of the
they were
freezer.
frozen. They came in a frozen pack.
There's a certain snobbery around
I know,
frozen.
but it pleased me in a way because I'm constantly saying, especially on my little program, because I'm trying to get people at home to make really good food from scratch. But don't be silly about it. You don't have to make custard from scratch when you can buy ready-made
like
custard like that. Well, this one's birds, but it could be. I mean, many of the. I'm now an expert in ready-made custard, and there are. The Co-op does a really good one. Tesco's does an okay one, and so on. So there are lots of really good ones. Ambrosia does a delicious one.
The Ambrosia one in the can.
Yeah. Yes, that's good.
Ambient is really good.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
It doesn't
especially
set.
no, it doesn't set, but it's fine for a sort of
Yeah, exactly. To pour on something.
to pour on something.
Anyway, so I'm always saying, don't be a snob. You can make a trifle in 5 minutes. I did one this morning because my husband is entertaining a whole lot of his old travelling friends, and he said, "Can you make a trifle?" And I said, "Look, I've got 10 minutes before my train. I have to leave the train." So I fished out some frozen stollen that was in the thing, and I smeared crabapple jelly on top of it, poured a whole heap of brandy on it, covered it with packet custard, and told him to whip the cream and put it on the top, and it will be delicious.
I mean, you love a trifle.
I do.
You love a trifle. You love custard. Would you say underneath the sort of, I mean, certainly the glamour of Leiths in the 70s and 80s, that there was actually quite a simple pared down palate? Because I read a story that when you were studying at the Sorbonne in Paris, one of your first sort of light bulb moments around food was with just a simple radish.
Oh yeah, I remember that very well. I was queuing in a student canteen. There was a chilled cabinet, and we were queuing up. And you know how the French have little dishes of veg as a first course? They often just have beans with maybe a few almonds on top, or grated carrots, and very simple first courses. And among these was 4 radishes on a plate, with the leaves on them. They were very fresh. There's French breakfast, they're called, with white tips. They're lovely. So 3 or 4 of those on a plate, a little pile of sea salt, and a blob of butter. And I said to the guy next to me, who was French, I said, "That's not food." I mean, as far as I was concerned, radishes were something pretentious cooks cut into roses and put them on.
Well, you fed to rabbits.
Yes, yeah. I mean, what were radishes for? So I said, "That's not proper food." And he said, "Try it." And so we sat down together, and he took a radish and he smeared it through the butter, and he dipped it in the salt, and he put it in my mouth. And I thought, it was a light bulb moment, because I thought, God, that's delicious. And it hasn't been cooked. There's nothing in there. All that is good ingredients. And it really made me think, good ingredients are the answer to cooking.
Good ingredients are the answer.
Good ingredients not messed up too much.
And that is the whole principle behind this podcast, is there is no such thing as a bad ingredient.
Yeah.
It's just you haven't had it cooked properly for you. It is time for you to don the Spooning with Mark Wogan blindfold. But we've gone for something a little racier for you today, because you are someone who enjoys colour. I think it would be fair to say.
Absolutely.
And look, I've gone colour. I've gone beads.
We're in red. We're both in red.
Yes,
it's very good. But listen to me. Are you going to make an idiot of me now and give me brandy and ask me whether I can't tell it from orange juice?
We are not interested in making an idiot of anybody here whatsoever.
Well, good.
And we are going to start with your first spoon here. I'm just going to slide this, and now I will feed you. It's an exercise in trust, this.
Yeah, okay.
You're going to have to trust me here. You can't see it. You'll ruin the surprise. I'm not taking the cloche off until you've got
mask on. I'll put the mask on.
There, the mask is on. There we go. And this is your first dish here.
This is quite exciting.
I'm just going to cut it up and just give you a delicious mouthful of this. Oh my God, that looks good. That is delicious.
I have no idea what you're doing.
Now, you tell me, open wide, you tell me flavours, textures. Oh, we've got a little leaf there. What have you got there?
It's something lovely and crunchy and
Any kind of greenish flavour.
very savoury.
I mean, this is listed as one of the things you love.
It's not the radishes.
No, it's definitely not the radishes. Here, whip that blindfold off. Let's have a look. So, this is a dish from Simon, head chef here, which is new season English asparagus, a sauce Gribiche, St. George mushrooms, an egg yolk, and lardo.
And lardo.
I mean, that is as asparagus dishes go.
I'm sort of not surprised I didn't know what it was, because it's quite complicated.
There's a lot
of flavours.
I mean, we don't make it easy.
No.
And can I just say that many of our industry's greats, of which I count you amongst those, have been fooled by the blindfold. Don't worry about that. Because there's that interesting thing when you
the mushrooms are actually pickled.
Yeah. Just a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of olive oil.
Well, I'm glad. I'd never have got any of that. But it is delicious.
It is delicious.
It's absolutely delicious.
But in your capacity as a judge now, because that's what, I mean, you've had this extraordinary career that has, outside catering, popular restaurant. I mean, people in its modern guise don't realise that where Claire Smith has core is where you had Leiths School of Food and Wine on Kensington Park Road.
I mean, I've only been to core once, but honestly, it was fantastic.
It's an amazing restaurant, and she's incredible, and hopefully one day will be a dame as well.
She jolly well ought to be,
along with Angela Hartnett. Angela Hartnett should definitely be a dame. The list could be longer, but those would be Angela definitely.
Yeah,
for dame.
Angela's wonderful.
But in your capacity now as a judge, so obviously we first saw you judging on the Great British Menu, which was a very kind of.
I was there for 11 years.
11 years. But that's the extraordinary thing. It's like you're there for 11 years judging some of the finest food.
And chefs, amazing chefs.
In the country, one of which was Richard
Corrigan. And I know.
Who I think, I've got to be honest, I think pound for pound is one of the best cooks alive.
Well, I absolutely agree with you.
Cook.
You probably won't believe me when I say this, because
I believe.
No, because anybody sitting in this position would agree with you. But the fact is that for the last 30 years, whenever anybody's asked me who is my favourite chef, I will always say Richard Corrigan.
Insane.
Because I love the fact that he so respects the ingredients, and very often, it'll just be so simple. It'll just be, a lump of halibut with a bit of hollandaise sauce,
but perfectly executed.
God, it's so good. And my favourite restaurant is Bentley's Oyster Bar.
Mine too.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
I think if you go and sit at the bar in the oyster
and
bar,
talk to the guy who
opens the
oysters,
and you eat off the blackboard,
exactly.
You will have some of the most honest food. I mean, let's be honest, he doesn't give it away, but I mean, but they're line caught fish. They're in from day boats. There's no trawler fish. There's nothing comes in frozen. That's all the best fish you can get, cooked in the best way possible. But and as a result, he won. How many times did he win the Great British Menu?
I don't know.
I mean, every time he entered it. But so you spend 11 years doing that, and you have a modicum of notoriety.
Yeah.
And then Mary decides to hang up her spatula on on Great British Bake Off.
Yeah,
You come in, all of a sudden, you achieve a level of notoriety for.
I know.
I mean,
funny.
do you find that strange?
Of course, it's strange because the, I mean it bugs me that it's just that the only people who've got honours are me and Mary because it looks as if it's because we're on
enough to hand it back, obviously.
No, of course not, and I think we both deserve it.
Yes, exactly.
But it bugs me because the public will think that's because of Bake Off, but that's not why you get a damehood.
No.
It's
it's the swan thing, isn't it? It's you get recognised at that level for all the paddling underneath.
Yes, but I mean, I slightly suspect that because of the amount of people that watch Bake Off, somebody who's making these decisions thinks, well, that will be a very popular honour. Or they think, if you have to poll people, if you have to poll the public about who should get it on, they're bound to say the people that they know from television.
Yeah.
But Angela Hartnett's on television, but not on the Bake Off.
No.
But she does a huge amount of good.
Huge, and I mean, has made life so much easier for women in hospitality.
Yeah, and she really believes in doing it right. She.
I mean, these are good people who deserve to be recognised for what they do. But you've now 11 years on Great British Menu, and then how many years?
This is my 9th year now.
9th year on that. I mean,
ridiculous.
Are you thinking of slowing down? I mean,
I'm thinking of it all the time. I don't do it. Well, I know I am.
I mean, is there any truth in the rumours that this might be your last Bake Off?
Well, that has been. Everybody said that for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And I started the hair because what happened was I thought I've got to have a summer holiday. This is ridiculous. I've been working from April to September without a break for 8 years. So, at that point it was for 7 years. I mean. So I went to the bosses and said, "Look, I'm going to quit because I can't do this anymore." And it hadn't occurred to me to say, can I quit some of it? I just thought I had to do it all, which was at the time Celebrity Bake Off, Great British Bake Off, Great American Baking Show, which is the same thing. And I had been doing Junior Bake Off.
Yeah.
So I said, "Look, so I'm quitting." And they said, "Well, why did you just quit enough to get the summer holiday you want?" And I said, "Can I do that?" And they said, "Yeah, why don't you choose one that you don't want to do?"
So are you here to stay for a while then, on the new schedule?
On the new schedule, I'd like to stay for a while, but I want to go before I'm pushed.
Yes. No, always leave them wanting more, as my father used to say.
Yes, I don't want some poor executive of Love Productions to be told to tell me that, Prue, I really think perhaps it's time.
The
I don't want that to happen.
It is, talking of time, we need to press on because it is time
let's
for
go faster.
for your next spoon. So I'm going to move that one out of the way down here. If you pop the blindfold back on.
This is agony. Anyway.
It's not agony. This is joy.
It's joy. Okay.
I'm going to slide this one in while you put that on. Here we go. Now this.
Oh my God! Yeah. Okay.
You all right?
Yeah. I just got my feet over the cable.
Right. So here we go. This one is
open wide.
Yep. Open wide-ish. Here we go. Oh, goodness me. There we go. Now. Open wide. This is quite a big mouthful. There we go. Tell me what you've got, flavours, textures, what we're enjoying there, what we're...
Custard.
Oops. Custard, of course, yes. Anything else?
Mm-hmm. Is it... Mm-hmm. You haven't... You haven't got peanuts in there, have you?
Yes, peanut butter.
Mm.
Go on, take the blindfold off. Because you said you hated peanut butter.
That does taste quite nice.
Yeah, you see? Look. So I made a peanut butter trifle. Brownies, custard.
My first thought was, it's a brownie custard, a trifle.
Mm.
And then I got the peanut butter and thought,
Mm.
The only thing I don't like, I don't mind the taste of peanut butter.
It's the texture.
It's the clagginess.
I mean, Johnny, the producer, can't even hear the word. So when it comes to editing this together, he will be in pain because he doesn't even like to hear peanut butter, peanut butter, peanut butter, Johnny peanut butter. There we go. Look, he's over there squirming at the moment.
But that is a palatable way of getting rid of peanut.
I mean, and also an homage to your love of the trifle.
Yeah, I do love a trifle, and I made 2 trifles this morning.
So you're going to stay with us on Great British Bake Off for the foreseeable.
Definitely, yeah.
Which is good news. But you're also...
I'm not doing Celebrity.
Not doing Celebrity. Caroline's taken over on Celebrity, hasn't she?
Yes, she has.
Which is a very good appointment. And also, we now see you regularly in your Cotswold kitchen. Which, I mean, after all your years and all your experience, why on earth would you have a TV crew into your own?
Oh, I love it. It's such fun. I mean, apart from anything else, I don't have to get up till 8 in the morning when Bambi, my makeup lady, comes and bangs on the door and she says, get into the makeup chair because you're on in an hour. And, that's very different from Bake Off, where I have to get up at 4:30 and 5 in the morning to travel.
Well, I suppose there's that bit, but you've got all these people in your house, and is it genuinely your kitchen, or did you build something? Well, no, because we had Alan Titchmarsh on. Turns out that shed isn't in his garden.
No, I know.
That's all I'm saying.
But it's not far.
No, it's not far. It is only around the corner. But okay, so there's one thing I've got to.
No, it is really in my kitchen.
It's really in your kitchen. And is that really your wall of utensils?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude, Prue, but I find that disturbing.
Why?
Well, it's just all there. It's there.
No, I absolutely love, all the, because otherwise if they're in a drawer, you can't find them and all of that. I have my knives in slots like that. I have the utensils hanging. If it hangs, I hang it. And then I have all the sort of most common flour, sugar,
No. I mean, look, it's all there for a reason. I get it.
It's all so that I can see it. I hate scrabbling around in cupboards and finding the sugar behind the oats,
But it just for me, from a slightly OCD perspective, it's just the fact that it's all hanging there. I find
you should see my necklace wall.
Oh, really?
That's much longer than the.
Do we think we could feature Prue's necklace wall?
Yeah, I'll show you a photograph.
I'd love to see. Well, look, you can show me that afterwards. Yeah. But that unfortunately is all for this week, everyone. I will be looking at Prue's necklace wall after this, which few can say they have seen. But thank you so much for agreeing to take part. It's been an honour to have Dame Prue Leith with us today. And, turns out I can feed her peanut butter if I do it in a trifle.
No, the peanut butter wasn't bad.
Good. Well, look.
Would have been better without it.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, you can eat around it. But thank you for taking part, and thank you to Prue Leith. And, of course, thank you to the fantastic team here at Corrigan's Mayfair and the beautiful Lindsay Room. Join us next week when I will have another very special guest who will be eating the food that they think they love and the food that they think they hate. If you like what we're doing here, you can find us at Spooning with Mark Wogan across all your social media channels, and we are available on the Virgin YouTube channel to see us in glorious Technicolor, which, quite frankly, this week is worth it because we're both wearing red fantastically. But until next week, stay beautiful.